Hey everybody, Huskyboy's here. He brought a present, something for me to work on. Isn't that great? Thank you, Mason. Good. We were just discussing the this 394 and some issues that we've noticed, and Mason's been noticing that after you come out of a cut, sometimes ported saws lean out, and he was thinking maybe it's the carb, maybe not, maybe not. So he actually cut a little hole right in here, just down at the base, for a little bit of extra airflow. And as it turns out, as you come out of a cut, the flywheel may not be delivering quite as much air injection, and you need a little bit more airflow. And that kind of delivers it. And then we were thinking, well, how can we improve on that? And I don't know what the practicality of this is, but ideally, because the air injection comes in here and pressurizes the carb area, you really want a plap. You want some type of a valve somewhere in here, so that as the area gets pressurized, the valve closes. But if for whatever reason there's negative pressure from the carburetor's trying to, or even the cylinder's trying to suck more air that the air injection can't deliver, somewhere else maybe would be nice to have the venting. You know, and just thinking about that, hang on a second.
Thing, because I noticed that Ween wilts a lot less with the low top than it does the high top, because it already has the cutouts.
You gotta wonder what those are for. But I don't know if that's... Are those cutouts actually... Do those actually have access to in here?
I think it's open when you have the setup on there.
It's an interesting discussion. Very interesting. Okay, so what are we doing today? We're doing some seals. And so it does look like a low-hour saw. Doesn't look like this has been used that much, and I can tell because there's not a lot of rash here. Most of the time when you see 394s, there's tons of rash all over the place, and lots of paint missing. And over here you can look at the tank too, and see if the tank here is like pristine. So probably this has not been run a million hours, So that's cool, but he seems to think that there might be a leak on the flywheel side seal, and per usual, apparently I'm taking the whole thing apart. So let's do it. Here we go. So another discussion, we happen to notice that he's missing the rubber bumper here, and actually somebody posted this online. They were complaining because their top cover was melted, and it was a guy that had gone and bought a used saw, and we were looking at it and going, at least I was kind of amused by the whole thing, because I'm pretty sure he paid too much money for it. And on first glance it might be okay, but the whole thing was a mishmash of all kinds of different stuff. And if you find a saw like that and you really don't know its history, it means the price goes down. The price has to go down. Also, what I typically ask about a saw is, even a saw like this, low-hour saw, when was its last rebuild? When did it have a rebuild? If the answer is never, then look at the date on the saw. So this is 6310206. So 6 is the first digit. That's probably 1996 this was made. So
it's older than me.
Yeah, it's older than Mason. Great. So 1996 this saw was made. It's 2017. That means that the saw is over 20 years old.
Rubber degrades, man.
Rubber degrades. This is really simple. Rubber degrades. If you have a car that's over 20 years old, even if it hasn't been used very much, what happens to the rubber? It degrades. So it needs to be addressed. It's one of those things that, the fuel line's probably shot. God knows when in the carburetor's probably shot. The seals need to be redone at minimum. You got to go in there and do those stupid seals. So if that's the case, if you're going to be tearing into a saw like that, which isn't a big deal for me, But if it is a big deal for you, and you're going to have a shop do something like that, the price has to go down. That's all got to be figured into the price of a saw. Just be real careful about paying too much for a saw. Even if it looks like it's in great shape, you got to figure all those things into it. So, a 394 like this, if this saw in nice shape, let's assume it's all complete, all OEM, running good. Maybe you even replace the seals with OEM seals. Perfect running condition. You probably get what, $600 for it?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So $500-600. So if the saw has issues, then and it's missing pieces and it's missing bolts and it's missing a heat shield or a couple of starter bolts or something and the starter's messed up, the price has to go down. It just does. So be careful about paying too much for saws. Okay, so we have this 372 bumper that we can stick in here, and then what you do is you take this piece of copper wire and you can go, this is just like 14 gauge Romex or something like that. So you can go and effectively hook it like that, and now that piece of rubber won't come out. So when you hook it, and you can then bend. You can actually do this. You probably bend that right over, boom, boom, and now it's not going anywhere. So, and of course, cut it off and trim it or whatever you want to do. And Mason's already got an OEM piece on order, and I think they do make them still. So, don't need to put this in there, but this is kind of an important little rubber piece. It's otherwise you're going to melt your top cover. Not good. So you do actually need that piece. It's not superfluous on the saw.
Yeah, because it vibrates against the...
Right, the whole thing, everything vibrates. So yeah, you're going to vibrate it, and eventually it's going to melt. And as soon as it melts to it, then it's going to stop vibrating and collect more heat, and then more melt.
Rub your hands.
Right, and then it starts melting, and then it deflects the heat off to the chain brake handle, and the chain brake handle melts. So you start having a very expensive
then you
repair.
probably melt your top end too, because the air is not directly over. So.
you could melt all kinds of stuff. Yeah, not the best.
The amazing how a little $5 piece can.
Well, what's stupid is they charge you astronomical amount of money for such a piece, but I just think that's like the dumbest thing in the world. But because it's rubber, I mean, come on. But Husky loves to charge people lots of money for those pieces. Oh well, let's do some seals. We've got this apart, and we need to put a seal in here. You always need goop of some kind. Well, technically you don't really need the goop, but I've brake cleaned the magnesium surface where this metal piece is going to seal against, and we're just going to put a little bit of. This is Loctite 518. Tiny amount, don't need much. Just make sure the surface is wet. Coke can trick, take a piece of Coke can. I've showed this in other videos. Because this part right here on the crank has a lip, and if you roll that seal and that spring comes out, then you're going to have a vacuum leak, and you're not going to know it until you vac test the saw. If you vac test the saw. So just push it down. Easy. And now we do find a socket that fits. Perfect. 11/16. Got it. Now, before you pull the seal out, you can pay attention to how deep the seal is set in. That way you know whether you're doing it flush or a little bit set in or whatever. There's no positive stop on this saw for the seal, so you can drive the seal right into the bearing, which obviously you don't want to do. And you want it even all the way around, so I'm looking at it going, it's a little high on this side, so keep going. Almost. So a little below flush all the way around, and that should be fine. Okay, pull the Coke can out, gentle, and somebody had an idea, and you can use old film for this too, instead of aluminum.
Film.
Yeah, for actual film from like 35 millimeter film.
Oh wow, really?
Camera film. Yeah. So some people don't even know what that is these days, but the you can use that, and then it's actually less likely to damage the seal than the aluminum. But I really think the aluminum is nice and stiff, and it has really low likelihood of actually cutting the rubber because it just isn't strong enough really to cut the rubber in this case. So as long as that lip is higher than the highest part of the seal, and the seal rolls kind of up, and you can see it's perfect all the way around. I've not done, you know.
Yeah, as good as it gets.
that's as good as it gets. So
Probably better than they do it in the factory.
Nice and even all the way around. That's what you're looking for. That's how to install that seal. Let's go to the passenger side.
This is the seal that goes out more likely than the other side, right?
Because the bearing is more likely to go out. There's more force on that. So this side we don't have to worry about using the Coke can trick because it doesn't have a lip. There's a lip, but it's much more gradual, and so we really don't have to worry about it. Still, the one thing on this side that kind of gets me is the fact that lip that is there is so far recessed. If it was a little further out, then you wouldn't have to drive the seal so far in. So I'm always kind of worried that I'm going to drive the seal too far in.
Yeah, because it's kind of hard to see what you're doing.
It's darn hard to see what you're doing. Check for the spring. Make sure there's a spring in there. Maybe the manufacturer had a bad day. You know, you never know.
Could have been made on a Friday.
Right, could have been a Friday. There's brake cleaner. I cleaned it with brake cleaner with a Q-tip.
Is the seal the same on both sides? The same actual seal?
Same seal both sides for this particular saw. Another reason why I like the saw, you don't have to mess around with different seals. So this makes a whole lot of sense for me. Where's my driver in? Okay, so we're not deep enough yet to be up and over the lip. Almost. Close. There we go. Right at it. There we go. I basically seat it so it rides right on the lip. You look at it, you tell me.
Yeah, it looks good.
I really wouldn't want to drive that any further for fear that it's going to interfere with the bearing. You got to hope that that's all right. So there's our seals installed on a 394. That's about it for the day. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Say bye-bye, Mason. Bye, Mason.